Okay, so I think what I'm gonna do next is reassemble my lower subframe based on the exploded view in the Bentley, and then we'll go ahead and install this in the steering rack back up on the car.
Step one for my specific assembly is to add some grease to the splines of the torsion bar on both ends, and also in my case along the length of the torsion bar itself. The reason why I'm doing this is that the Elephant Racing hollow quick change torsion bars have a fairly soft yellow zinc plating on them, and I noticed that they were pretty easy to scratch. So just as a preventative measure in hopefully preventing corrosion in the future, I went ahead and smeared a little bit of grease all along the length in case any of that plating rubs off, and just to slow down corrosion a little bit more than usual. In the case of the normal torsion bars, those are typically painted or powder coated, so this is not really an issue. You only need to grease up the splines themselves. So after dropping each torsion bar into the A-arm, I tapped it to make sure that the torsion bar seated at the splines at the front bearing cap. And then I went ahead and took the rear torsion bar retaining caps, and just to make sure, I started each one of the height adjustment screws and threaded it in a few threads just to make sure that there was no surprises there. Then I took the inboard sway bar mounts and popped those bushings onto the metal bracket part of the mounts, and assembled those hand tight onto the straight part of the sway bar that way, and left them finger tight so that I can go ahead and slide them around as needed and get things to line up correctly. Then once I got that done, I grabbed my torsion bar, my one of my A-arms, and took the rear bearing carrier and slid it into the front of the cross member, and took a little bit more grease and added it to the remaining exposed rear splines of the torsion bar, as well as the interior of the rear torsion bar retaining cap, just as a sanity check to make sure that there is enough grease on there and to prevent them from seizing up in the future. So after assembling the A-arm onto the cross member, I took the gray foam rubber dust seal and carefully put that over the end of the torsion bar. These are the OE ones, by the way. Then I grabbed the rear torsion bar cap, took the screw out, the height adjustment screw, placed the torsion bar cap over the rear splines, and then screwed the height adjustment screw back in. And I threaded it in enough to get the end of the screw to touch on the steel contact pad on the cross member itself, where it usually rests when it has the weight of the car on itself. Then I repeated the same process on the other side. A little bit more grease on the remaining rear splines of the torsion bar. Then I had a little mistake here because I let the A-arm hang, and I thought that it would be retained in there a little tighter than it actually was, but that was my mistake. So be careful to not do that, especially if you have freshly painted A-arms just like I do. So lesson learned, I put everything back together, including the rear torsion bar cap and the screw, and tightened it just enough to hopefully keep everything relatively tight as I'm putting it together. Now this time, instead of letting the A-arm hang in the air, I was a little more careful, and I was able to install the second one in place. Put the dust seal on, took the height adjustment screw out, put on the rear torsion bar retaining cap, tapped it into place, installed the height adjustment screw, and screwed it into place, and threaded it far enough to go through the height adjustment, the retaining cap, so that the end of the height adjustment screw is touching the steel contact pad on the aluminum crossbar itself. Then I took anti-roll bar and as gently as I could maneuver the ends of the anti-roll bar into the anti-roll bar bushings located on the ends of the outboard ends of the A-arms. Fortunately, this is the stock anti-roll bar, and it's soft enough or flexible enough that you can kind of manipulate it by hand and get it into position relatively easily. In the past, if this operation got tough, I've used dishwashing soap smeared into the bushing to be able to get things to slide a little bit easier into position, but this time it wasn't really needed. Then I took the inboard sway bar bushings and the retaining brackets and slid those into position and tapped them into the inboard locations on the aluminum cross member itself. Then I took the mounting hardware that goes on the inboard anti-roll bar brackets and put those on finger tight to tie the brackets to the cross member, to sort of keep things into position while I maneuver the entire assembly under the car.
Ta-da! More or less ready to install. With a little bit of preload like it was originally. Once I get it on the car and I bolt it up, then I'll take the caps out, the torsion bar caps at the back, and I'll set the preload evenly, so I can set the right height. But that's down the line. For now, this is good. And now let's get it back on the car along with the steering rack. Well, kind of ugly, but they'll do the job. Now to design some tow hooks to go underneath them.
while my suspension was off the car, I was able to design and have made for me a pair of replacement steel tow hooks, which are of a heavier gauge steel than the original tow loops that were attached to the sides of the bearing caps. And because they are a heavier gauge steel, they should be at least as strong as the OE units, if not stronger, most likely stronger. And I was able to have them powder coated for red for durability, and they fit around the bearing carrier at the front of the A-arm, and they have the same bolt pattern as the front A-arm bearing carrier, as well as the bearing cap itself. More about these a little bit later on in the video once I have them installed.
All right, I'm gonna put the steering rack in. I forgot to do something though. I forgot to put this little hat over the this plastic cover thing over the shaft. So here we go. I'm gonna put this over like that. I'm gonna put this little bearing about right there. It's already been greased up. And we're gonna try to maneuver this guy yikes, back up into this opening. Oh boy, the bearing wants to fall out. Let me see if I can get it in there. Hello. Alrighty. There it goes. There it goes. Problem is, I have no, there's nothing holding it up. So I need to, do a couple things here. Like, mainly, I think I'm going to suspend it from the tie rods. I'm going to grab this tie rod and stick it in the spindle location. Come on. Get in there. There. And now I'm just going to put this nut over it, a few threads in to kind of hold it off the ground while I go get in the front and try to position this thing in the correct orientation. So I'm going to do the other side. Come on. Alrighty, there. Yeah. There, so now it's kind of, now I can sort of push this guy back up into a reasonable position. All right, now it won't fall on my face, and I can connect the steering shaft from the top. And obviously once I put the subframe in here, then I can bolt down the rack into its correct position and make sure all the fuel lines and everything are in the correct orientation. I've got the steering rack hanging by the tie rods on the spindles. And the box itself is sort of just suspended in midair. And I can't get this, I have to get this stub in here, but it won't, I can't just pull it up because the steering box is kind of hanging. So I think what I have to do in order to get this closer to here is I have to take the front subframe and bench press it into place, bolt it up, hand tight, finger tight, and then hopefully this will get closer over here once the steering rack is at the right height
vertically.
Oh boy, heavy. Oh, those are for the sway bar. That's what they're for. This is gonna be a little bit tough. You probably won't be able to see much from there. I apologize in advance. But man, this is gonna be tough. Boy, I sure wish I had a lift right about now. I don't know how I'm gonna. Let's see. I think I need my motorcycle jack. Yeah, that's what we need. It's not very heavy, but it's a bit awkward. So let's see if this little jack can help me put this in a position. Come on. All right. Okay. I think this might. Okay, I think this might work. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is line up the holes that mount the cross member to the body with the really, really long bolts. So let's see if we can do that. Okay, I'm gonna change my approach a little bit. I'm gonna spin on the front bolts first because the big hole on the back is not is kind of messing with me. So I'm gonna bolt up the front A-arms the front of the A-arms real quick. A few threads in. Hopefully you can see it from there. If not, I'll show you on the other side in a second. Okay, now this side. Let's see here. Bolt this guy up. Just a few threads. And then, boy, I sure wish I had a lift. Or at least an extra set of hands. Okay, now, let's go. Okay, the adjuster just fell out. So, whatever, let's just... Maybe I should have put them in without the adjusters in place. But now it lined up. Perfect. No cross threading, no nothing, just easy peasy. So, all right, gonna do that. Oh yeah, now I can. So after putting the bushings on, for some reason the front, if I bolt up the back, the front ones won't line up. If I bolt up the fronts, the back ones won't line up. So something is up with the hole-to-hole distance on the subframe versus the floor. And I try to get this secure this in place, and then we'll find a root cause. For now, the huge rear bolts seem to be going in, so relatively easily with no, not forcing them in. Okay, there's a little bore. There's kind of like a raised boss on the body, and there's a bore in the under here, and they mate into each other. So they center into there, and that holds the location. So this is good. This seems to have gone into the right location. Now let me just double check the other side, and I think we'll get back to the steering rack at this point. Yep, we're good. Nothing's torqued down yet. But I do want this to be at the right height so that the steering rack can be put in the correct position. Okay, good. We'll deal with the front ones a little bit later. Lo and behold, check this out. Ta-da! Now the steering rack splined shaft is right there next to the clamp on the steering column, and the bushing kind of put itself in the position where it's supposed to be anyway. So, all right, let's come back up here and clamp this together. Okay, here's some progress on the struggle. So I could not simply slide this spline shaft up into the clamp on the steering column. It was way too tight, so I had to get 2 flathead screwdrivers, pry the clamp open a little bit, and then I got the spline shaft to go in about halfway. But now I'm stuck. I can't, I push down on the clamp and then the rack moves around. So I think I have to go underneath the car and bolt the steering box to the front cross member. That way it can't move up, down, left, right, anywhere. And then I can finish scooching this clamp up here down onto the shaft. I think I can now move this thing out of the way. Thank you, little motorcycle jack, for your service. It's very much appreciated. Okay, now, what are we trying to do here? Oh yeah, we're trying to get, oh hey, it's already kind of more or less lined up. That's good. Ooh, easy with the aluminum threads. I think these are the bolts that go in here, these hex head ones. So, are they? No? Maybe not. They're a little short. Actually, I think it might be these. Yeah, try these. Oh yeah, there we go. All right, a few threads in. Where's the other bolt? Yeah, this one. Okay, let's move the rack. I can sort of visually line up where the rack needs to be. And we can put these bolts in. Man, this is, the front suspension is really simple, but man, any kind of suspension work is such a challenge because everything is so heavy and, you know, heavy duty and huge and awkward to maneuver. All right, The rack is now bolted to this. This is bolted to the car. These front arms are just sort of hanging on for dear life, but whatever. And I really don't like how this is sort of where. Okay, let's go back up and finish the steering rack. All right, so now we're back up here in the front smuggler's box. Now the rack won't go anywhere. Here's the plastic liner thing. Here's the bushing sitting right where it needs to go. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clamp the bushing down here, and then we'll grab this with some pliers and lever it down until it goes over the shaft. Circling back to this situation, thanks to some recommendations from people that are way better at this than I am, I was able to get the shaft to engage completely in this clamp by first spreading these two clamp halves apart as best I could with a pair of flathead screwdrivers. And then while pressing down on here with my hand and getting a rubber mallet dead blow, I was able to tap, 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 tap on this and get it to eventually get the clamp to eventually scooch down over the spline shaft to the point where now it's fully engaged. The top of this spline shaft is flush with the top of the clamp here, so there's no need to go any further, and it's all tightened down with the original bolt and nut that was on here, and we're good to go. I thought about replacing this nut. It's a nylock, however, it's a much taller nylock than your standard off-the-shelf one, meaning it has more thread engagement. I'd say maybe a couple more threads, 2-3 more threads than typical. And yeah, so it just seemed a lot more secure to keep this rather than get a generic off-the-shelf M8 one or whatever size this thread was. And the nylon locking patch here actually was still kind of doing its job. So I put it back on. If you want to put a little dab of blue Loctite for anti-vibration purposes and to keep this from coming off, then you may go ahead and do so. But yeah, this side is good to go too. This looks like it deserves to have a flat washer below it. So, considering how oval this slot is on this bracket, probably wouldn't hurt to put a flat washer below it. So we'll do that. This is just on here kind of finger tight. Do the other side now. Do not cross thread. Okay, now we're good. Hand pressure. It's basically on there. Beautiful. These are all. So now the front and the rear cross member is bolted in, the sway bar is bolted in, and the front of the A-arms are now bolted in kind of snugly. And I guess I had forgotten previously that these torsion bar height adjuster things and this sway bar put a little bit of preload on the system, so it's hard to get everything lined up fore and aft. So once I removed both caps and released the sway bar to kind of just hang, then I was able to move the A-arms back and forth and bolt them up into place. So that's all good news. Now everything lined back up. So now it's time to put these caps back in here and snug them down. So now with everything bolted up on the front, more or less, I can show you why I went ahead with the Elephant Racing hollow quick change torsion bars. So besides the benefit of having the hollow torsion bars that are a little bit lighter and have less rotational inertia and all that good stuff, these, if you're someone who's going to be doing a lot of suspension tuning and swapping out different springs and messing with damper settings and whatnot, which I'm not doing now, but maybe in the future I will be, I don't know. I would like to do as much noodling with the suspension as I possibly can. So if I ever wanted to switch these out, then I can, after I take off loosen the height adjuster screw and the torsion bar retaining cap, then you can expose the back of the front torsion bar. And if you take the sway bar, this sway bar bracket, and unbolt it from here and let it kind of hang out of the way a little bit, now you have a clear line of sight to be able to screw this 1/4-20 bolt into the end of the torsion bar and pull it straight out back, underneath the floor. And then you should be able to swap in another one just as easily and, tap it into place so that the splines engage and whatnot. It seemed like a pretty good idea, fairly practical and easy to do. Again, it's just one of those things where I may or may not be messing with the suspension spring rates in the future, but I'd like to have that option if possible. So I went ahead and did that, and yeah, that's how these guys work. Let's pop off this bolt. I'm not sure why it's a 1/4-20 instead of a M6, but whatever. Now we'll just put these guys back on here and snug it down. Oh yeah, it ain't over. Doo-doo, doo-doo. So, okay, this thing's already greased up. Make sure the torsion bar is it's in there. Put this guy on. Alrighty. For now, I'm just setting it kind of as horizontal as I can. Obviously, you can set it, because of the splines, you can set it at a certain angle. For now, I'm just going to set it here, and then I'll readjust it later if needed. I just want to get it assembled. And then I'll put the screw in. And fight the thread locker that's on here a little bit. Now it's all right. Looks like we're preloaded now. All right, that's not going anywhere. Not sure if you can hear outside, the neighborhood hot boys are out on the local drag strip doing their Saturday night showing off. Ay, ay, ay. All right, now the other side. Same thing over here. Also, don't forget the foam seal that goes underneath the retaining cap. I guess that's mostly based on what I'm seeing is it's mostly a dust seal to prevent dirt and crud from going into the cavity between the A-arm and the torsion bar. Yeah, so if they're disintegrated, put some new ones on there, and I guess they're foam and not rubber so that they can compress quite a bit. Yeah, I would imagine if you put a rubber gasket on there, it's going to give you some trouble, and it may not you may not be able to get this screw on here. Whether or not you could use a gasket or not, I don't know, but whatever. We went with the OE Porsche one because the old ones seem to have lasted, you know, 40 some odd years, and they were greasy and gross, but they hadn't disintegrated into dust yet, so yeah. Alrighty. Done deal. This is all buttoned up. Yeah, let's see what else we have to do next. So that's it. Once you put these caps back on over the splines and you put the screw in, as the screw touches that pad here, then it starts to twist and put preload on the torsion bar, and then you'll see the A-arm start to come down ever so slightly in its range of motion, and that's how you adjust the height on these. When you drop it back on its front wheels, then depending on where you set this, the suspension will have a particular set or right height, and that's about it. That's how you do this front torsion bar assembly. So here's the way my brand new tow hooks fit under the front of the bearing caps, and everything fits quite nicely. I did have to end up making some adjustments to the bearing cap itself, and the reason why I did that instead of getting new ones is that the new, I actually don't know if Porsche remakes the original ones, but the aftermarket ones that are out there are made of a thinner gauge steel, and they just are not as high quality as these. So after cutting off the hooks, I ended up reshaping the edges a little bit and reshaping kind of a semicircular profile here so that it hugs this front tube on this front crash bar here. And yeah, everything fits up pretty nicely. I did go ahead and place the hook below the bearing carrier. That way I'm not changing the height of the front bearing and causing any suspension geometry changes. So I installed the front bearing carrier against the body first, then my brand new hooks, and then my old bearing cap over it, and bolted it all together. And just like it says on the in the Bentley manual, there's supposed to be a spacer that goes in between in here, in between this and this. And I went ahead and made my setup work with a 10 millimeter thick bushing that fits quite nicely in there. And I also had to go with longer bolts to since I increased the height of the whole sandwich. I went with 50 millimeter M10s in the back, and then 45 millimeter
M10s back here and 50s here in the front. Your results may vary, but you can always, unless you're adding hooks like I did, if the thickness of the entire sandwich remains the same, then you can reuse your original bolts. But in my case, everything torqued up really nicely, and yeah, it's nice and secure now. If you want your own hooks, if you're willing to go this custom route and hack off these old beat up hooks, but you still want to retain your bearing caps to protect your front bearings, then I will put a link in the description to where you can buy these. And yeah, you can have your own to put on your car. They should fit all 911s up to and including the G body generation, so up to 1989. So now that the front suspension assembly is all buttoned up, we're gonna change our focus to the shocks, the ball joint replacement, and the top hat as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pinch off the brake line so that the master cylinder doesn't drain out when I disconnect the line from the caliper, and then I'm going to drop this assembly so that we can replace those bushings on the top hat.